Okay, so in this video we're going to solve a particular problem involving the distance formula. So what we're going to do, what we're given in fact, is a point M which is 5k. We're not told what this part of the coordinate is, and a point R which is minus 3, 1, and we have to find a value for this particular k. The only bit of information we're given is that the distance between these 2 points M R is square root 65. So, because we're given the distance between M and R as root 65, we're going to use the distance formula. So the distance between M and R is going to be this formula here, which is x2 minus x1 to be squared plus y2 minus y1 to be squared. So this is the formula we're going to use, and we're going to stick everything into this formula. And we should be left with one unknown k, and we should somewhere down along here be able to isolate k, so we should end up with k is equal to a number, or 2 numbers in this case. So let's start. First thing I'm going to do is just identify our x and y's here. So this here is going to be my first x. This is x1. This is my first y, so that's y1. This is x2, and this is y2. So this is my x1, y1, x2, y2. I've got to put these values in here, and this is the distance MR, root 65, that's going to go here. So let's do that then. Distance between M and R is the square root of 65, and on the right hand side we're just going to put in all our values that we know. So x2 is minus 3, that goes there. x1 is 5, that goes there. It's going to be 2 squared. y2 is 1, and y1 is k. So now all our values are substituted into the formula, and you can see here that we've got an equation. We have everything in that equation except this k. So we can isolate k. We can get k on its own on one side of the equation, put everything else on the other. So we'll have solved for k. So let's see how we're going to do that. Now we have a square root here on the left hand side, we have a square root on the right hand side. So what I'm going to do first of all is square both sides. The opposite to square root is to square. So if you square this here, square root of 65 times the square root of 65 is just simply 65. Same on the right hand side. If you square the right hand side, you will get what's underneath the square root symbol. So we've got all of this here on its own without the square root symbol. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I can write 65 down again, and whoops, I'll just write that properly. So I'm just going to write 65 here. On the right hand side, minus 3 minus 5 is minus 8. We've got to square that. I'll do that in a minute. Here we've got a 1 minus k to be squared. I'll square that as well. Okay, so let's start squaring out the right hand side. So we've got a 65 here. We've got minus 8 squared. Minus 8 multiplied by minus 8 is plus 64. Now I've got to square this out here. So I'll do that here in the rough work. So we're going to take 1 minus k and we're going to square it. So really what we're going to do is 1, I'm going to take this 1 minus k, and I'm going to multiply it by itself, 1 minus k. So the way we've been doing this is we've been taking this term here, we've been writing it down, multiplying it by the second bracket, 1 minus k. Then we're taking this second term in the first bracket, and we write that down here, and we're going to multiply that by the second bracket. So basically what we're doing is multiplying everything in this bracket by everything in this bracket here. So 1 times this bracket minus k times this bracket. Okay, so let's do that. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times minus k minus k. Minus k times 1 minus k, and minus k times minus k. Minus by minus is plus, k times k is k squared. Now I'll just rewrite that with k squared first. The k is next, so that's minus 2k, minus k is minus 2k, and then we've got a plus 1 here as well. So it's k squared minus 2k plus 1. So when we square that, this is what we get. So I'm just going to write that down. So we've got plus k squared minus 2k plus 1. Okay, so you can see here that we've got a quadratic equation. So what I'm going to do is bring everything over to one side and then solve for k. So let's bring this 65 over here. We'll do that here. Okay, so we've got a 0. I'm going to put the k squared first. Then I'm going to put my minus 2k next. And then I'll put in all the numbers after that. So I have a plus 1, I have a plus 64. Now remember, I'm bringing this 65, this is a plus 65, I'm bringing it over here, so it's going to become minus 65. Or the other way of looking at it is, I need to get rid of this 65 from the left hand side, so I'm going to put in a minus 65 here, so I must put in a minus 65 on the right hand side. It cancels from the left hand side and we get 0. And this is the minus 65 on the right hand side. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is, let's see, I'm just going to simplify the right hand side. So I've got the k squared, I've got my minus 2k, I've just got three numbers here that I need to add up. So I've got a 1 and a 64, which will give me a plus 65. Plus 65 minus 65 is just 0, so all of these numbers will just cancel. And I'm left with k squared minus 2k equals 0. Now, on the right hand side here, what I really need to do is factorize this expression here. So to factorize this, I'm going to look and see, is there anything common between these two terms? There is. There's a k here and there's a k here. So I'm going to factorize by just taking the k outside the bracket. That'll leave me with a k here and a minus 2. Just checking that k times k will give me k squared, k times minus 2 will give me minus 2k. So that's correct. So what I'm left with is this multiplied by this to give me 0. Now you'll remember that when you multiply two things together and your answer is 0, then either this term here or this term here must be equal to 0. Whenever you multiply two things together to get 0, one of them must be 0. So in other words, k is equal to 0 or k minus 2 is equal to 0. So now we have one value for k already. K is 0. We can't do anything else with that, so that's fine. We have one solution. And we've almost got the second solution here. K minus 2 is equal to 0, so that means k must be equal to 2. Bring this minus 2 over here, it becomes plus 2. Or add 2 to both sides. If you add a 2 here, it'll cancel that minus 2. Add 2 here, you'll get this 2 here. So we have our two values. K is equal to 0, or k can be equal to 2. So if I go back up here, the question was, find two possible values for k. So you can have k as 0 here, and you'll get a distance of square root 65. Or k can be plus 2. You'll also get a distance of square root 65. And you can go on to put 0 in here, stick all the values in here and see, do you get square root 65? You should do. Put a 2 in here, stick all the values in here, again you should also get square root 65. Okay, so that's it for that video.